Welcome back, everybody, to our Great Minds in Philosophy series. This lesson is going to talk about the life, influence, and works of Immanuel Kant. Of course, this being the main philosopher that we're going to be exploring in this series of lessons on great minds. So generally speaking, this lesson is going to provide a short biography of Immanuel Kant in order for you to have a good understanding of the sort of time period in history in which he was writing and he was philosophizing fundamentally, as well as to provide you with some of the key works that Immanuel Kant obviously contributed to philosophy more generally. So in terms of the birth and early life, he was born on the 22nd of April 1724 in Königsberg, which is now modern-day Kaliningrad in Russia. At the time, this was part of the Prussian Empire. So you get a general idea of roughly the location in which he was born, but also the time period in which he was born as well. He would attend a school in Königsberg, and then he would later study at the University of Königsberg, where he would initially pursue studies in theology. Now, his studies in theology would then ultimately start to shift to studies in philosophy and mathematics. And there is actually quite a lot of mathematics, or a certain degree of mathematics and logic in some of the writings and some of the works of Immanuel Kant. And so his studies in philosophy and mathematics would obviously influence his later life and later influence his overall legacy, if we will describe it as such, in philosophy more generally. Now, in terms of an academic career and in terms of his key works, it should be noted that his earlier writings would include a number of essays on natural science as well as mathematics. So it should be noted that, just like with a number of other philosophers at the time, Immanuel Kant would contribute to not only philosophy, but also to other subjects. In a similar way that natural science and mathematics and philosophy were all sort of interwoven during the classical period in sort of ancient philosophy, so too during the sort of 16, 17, and 1800s did philosophers also contribute to key issues and key works within mathematics and within natural science. People like Leibniz, people like Descartes, all contributing to mathematical discoveries. His first publication was in 1755 and was titled Universal Natural History and Theory of the Heavens. It proposed a number of nebular hypotheses for the formulation of the solar system. So it wasn't particularly groundbreaking in terms of its legacy and in terms of what it actually achieved in terms of being able to accurately and scientifically explain the formulation of the solar system, but it nevertheless represented the earliest publication that Immanuel Kant contributed to the broader epistemic world, to the broader world of science, natural science, and philosophy. His seminal work, however, would come around 30 or so, 25-ish years later, and this is the work that he is most renowned in terms of his knowledge of. This is A Critique of Pure Reason. This is where we see the introduction of his critical philosophy, an area that revolutionizes the field of philosophy, and an area that is probably the magnum opus of Immanuel Kant, probably the most seminal work, and probably the most influential piece of writing that he would contribute. Within this particular piece of writing, he would address the limitations on the scope of human understanding, and he argued that while our knowledge begins with experience, it does not all arise out of experience. In this regard, therefore, he distinguishes between two major different types of knowledge and the acquisition of two different types of knowledge. Firstly, the a priori knowledge, which is independent of experience, and then secondly, a posteriori knowledge, which is knowledge which is dependent on experience. It is dependent often on empirical analysis and experience from empiricism. In terms of his later life and then his eventual legacy, he would hold a position as a professor at the University of Königsberg, where he taught philosophy, and he would develop his ideas into a more into his more systematic and rigorous approaches. He became well known for his systematic and rigorous approaches to philosophy. Generally speaking, if we think about the life of Immanuel Kant, it is interesting to note that he had a very quiet life. He had a very strict routine. He never married and was known for his disciplined schedule and his regular walks, rather than having any kind of excitement, if we will, if you would describe it as such, within his life. Very quiet life. Never married. Never really leaving Königsberg at any stage throughout his life. And so, when he dies in 1804 on the 12th of February in Königsberg, his death marks the end of a particularly interesting era of philosophy, one that would continue to grow after his death. And it is one that is signified by a number of works in not just ideas relating to metaphysics and epistemology, but also relating to the nature of human existence, the nature of the mind, as well as ethics, becoming one of his most prominent theories, being his theories of ethics and deontology as well. So these are the areas that we are going to essentially be looking at over the next few lessons. In around 10 or 12 lessons, we're going to explore his areas of philosophy, including his epistemology, his ethics, his metaphysics, and the ideas and contributions he makes to aesthetics. His work would ultimately lay the groundwork for later philosophical movements. So ideas such as German idealism, ideas such as phenomenology, and ideas such as existentialism all have their foundations in some of the earlier writings of Immanuel Kant. For those of you who don't know already, we have a series of lessons on the study of existentialism, if you want to have a look at those already. And fundamentally, it is therefore the case that this is a series of lessons that is going to provide something of a basic overview of Kantian philosophy, rather than going into any great and systematic detail. It is supposed to provide you with an overview of the contributions that Kant brought to philosophy, hence why we've called this the Great Minds in Philosophy series. And so fundamentally, while you might think that there is more to go at in terms of these lessons, in terms of the kinds of contributions that he made, we will be going at them in different parts of these series. So talking about them with reference to epistemology, to metaphysics, and to ethics and aesthetics. So bear that in mind when we're doing these lessons. Bear in mind that we are looking at a variety of different areas of philosophy through the lens of one individual, rather than looking at the disciplines in more detail.